Many of our young friends who are preparing for the IAS examination and for that matter other competitive examinations have been asking me this question as to what is the difference between focus and concentration, and more importantly, how to avoid and prevent distractions. Now friends, as we all know, focus is about width. So you really are getting narrower and more specialized into the knowledge. And concentration is really about the depth, how far deep you're going. So that's about focus and concentration. And we all know that there are distractions, and anything which takes you, diverts you from your path is obviously not going to help you in the attainment of your mission. I've also been doing a series of small talks on lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, and in this context the combined question was, is there any specific answer which the Holy Bhagavad Gita gives us as to how to avoid these distractions? By way of a disclaimer, as I have already said before, I am not a scholar in Sanskrit, or for that matter a great scholar in the study of our ancient Indian Hindu scriptures, or particularly Bhagavad Gita, but I have been trying to do some self-study and internet research. Now precisely the same question comes before Lord Krishna in chapter 3, and more particularly verses 33 and 34. The question which is posed to Lord Krishna here is, how do we avoid these distractions? What are these which lure us away from our path? Now, in these 2 or 3 very condensed verses, Lord Krishna takes us through what our innermost tendencies are, what our prakritis are, innate nature, what our sanskaras are. And with the help of those, he tries to explain how we succumb to our temptations. Now, first things first, these inbuilt habits, ingrained habits, hardwired DNA, whatever you might call them, they are there at a subconscious level. The manifestation can be at the conscious level, we'll come to it later, but those habits are ingrained and are operating at the subconscious level, and most of the time we are not even actively aware of those. Now, whether they are something which developed over your childhood and so on, or some people would like to have a theory these are carried from your previous births, irrespective, those are ingrained tendencies, propensities to succumb to temptations. There are both positive and negative. There's something which you have an urge for, you have an intense like for, and there's something which you dislike. So those could manifest at any particular time, but they are lying at a subconscious level. On the other hand, our manifestations, and at a very, very acutely conscious level, are your thoughts, your words and actions. And the theory is that whenever our senses dip into these ingrained subconscious habits and tendencies and samskaras, then we are guided almost instinctively by how we think, how we speak and how we act. To illustrate, for instance, you may have a craving for rasmalai, at the same time you are dieting. You know pretty well, you're acutely conscious, a knowledgeable person. These verses are dealing with a person who's well versed with his mission, his objective, his aim, his lakshya. It is not as if he doesn't know. For instance, students preparing for these competitive examinations know that they have to focus, they have to study. So they have that sampurna jnana of what they need to do. But then in face of those are these distractions. So for instance, we were talking about the rasmalai. You know that you're dieting, but at the same time, you have this rasmalai in front of you. there is that immediate urge and you eat it. That from that urge to moving your hand, taking to your mouth is a very manifest and active action, a karma in that sense that you perform. Similarly, it need not necessarily be, the sense of sight itself. It is said that all the five senses relate to, for instance, eyes relate to sight, your tongue to taste, and what you hear from the ear, and so on, those five senses. But you can have multiple manifestations. For instance, if something nice is cooking, the aroma of the food itself may take you to the kitchen for you to have a quick bite. And even if the pakoras are being fried, the mere sound might trigger that urge. So what we are trying to say is that in now, coming back to our topic, for instance, you are studying and you have a distraction. It is ingrained in you. The distraction could be a sound of a notification on WhatsApp, on Telegram, of a mobile which is lying upside down. And you have that immediate urge to see who's there. So now here is the key, the secret of success to kill those urges at the right time. Lord Krishna says that these habits, ingrained habits, propensities, samskaras, both positive and negative, likes and dislikes, intense likes and dislikes, they lie hidden in the subconscious. But when they are triggered by our senses, and before we actually act, and when we say act, before there are thoughts, words and actions, there is that narrow window of opportunity where your mind is telling, hey, no, don't do it. You're studying on your mobile and you're seeing a YouTube lecture for your how to prepare for the interview. But on the screen itself, you get a notification. And you should not be paying any heed to it or just swipe it off. But you succumb. So here is the key between those distractions, likes and dislikes, those urges, those prakritis, pravritis, by whatever name you may describe, and you're actually succumbing to those by virtue of manifest thoughts, words or actions. There is that little window of opportunity. And within that, your mind should act as the regulator to say, no, I am not going to be paying any heed to this notification. I am not going to be eating this rasmalai, howsoever my mouth may be watering. So therefore, it is here that the mind as the controller. Even our Sikh Gurbani mentions Panchanka Guru Ek Tehan. So your mind is the regulator and will regulate those urges which emerge and say, no, don't do it. And mind you, one thing is there. In English also we have this almost an idiomatic saying, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So when you are actually killing those propensities, you should not sit idle because then they will return. You have to then keep on going on the path that you are doing. For instance, if you're studying something, there may be an urge, let me talk to my friend. He also said he'd be, studying the same topic. And before you reach for the phone, at that very time, your mind will tell you, hey, you got to study your chapter first. Then after 9 o'clock, you may do that discussion with your friend. But if you are again trying to ruminate, deliberate upon the same thing, chances are that you may stray off your mission, which is to study a particular chapter. So friends, as they say, Waris Shah, the famous Sufi Punjabi poet, mystic, he said, Waris Shah na jandiyan aatan chahe kattiye poriyan ni. Now these habits are very hard to dilute, to kill. You may take a lifetime to undo those habits. They can be done with great amount of meditation, concentration, and putting your mind as an ankush. But here we take them as given. But whenever they begin to manifest, your mind should come into the play, and that window of opportunity is narrow. You know, you are jnanam, you have the knowledge that you have to be focused. You have a civil service examination to give, you have the joint entrance examination to take. So, you cannot afford those distractions. And whenever those distractions come, before you succumb, before the manifest thought, words, or action pour out, let your mind regulate and drive them away and steer you towards your positive action. So, these, friends, are the verses 3.33 and 3.34. At cost of repetition, they do not relate to your not knowing. You know you should not be eating, you're dieting. You know you should not be eating junk food. You know you're preparing for the civil services examination and the time at your disposal is limited. You should not be succumbing to these temptations. But then those are habits, subconscious, built-in, ingrained, prakriti, individual's nature, DNA hardwired. But before you do, there is the narrow window of opportunity, and that is where a trained mind steps in, where a disciplined mind steps in, and you can steer clear towards your mission. So thanks, friends, for watching. And if you think that these little videos are of any value to you or your friends, please do not hesitate to comment, like, share, and we'll be in touch. See you soon.